You're listening to the PR Wind Down Podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down. Laura Schooler, how have you been?
Hi, April. I'm good.
Oh, I get like a cartoon voice. What do I owe this cartoon honor?
Well, because I was listening to myself the other day, and my is that
Oh
like
my Lord.
Mickey Mouse?
No, you sound like Julia Child. That's what you sound like.
Oh my God.
You do.
I used to get that, but I
What?
Like, you're not the first person to call me Julia Child.
You do not normally sound like Julia Child.
I know, but I guess.
But your cartoon version apparently sounds like Julia Child.
This guy I went to high school with, who like lives to torment me, he told me I sounded like Julia Child. This is like going back decades, and his example of me sounding like Julia Child was to say, "First you take the chicken."
We keep going.
And that was it, but it was hilarious.
So how is cartoon Laura Schooler that sounds like Julia Child?
Good. I've made my way, like the old 40s cartoons where they're like the black and white, where it's like very elementary animation. That's how I've been getting through life like this. And there's like a train in the background going like choo choo.
And that's why you're a cartoon today.
Yes.
Okay, so you're plodding along like a black and white cartoon. No, if for people who can't see the video because they're only listening to audio, Laura looks like, what's that weird thing that people do when they pretend that they're going downstairs, but what they really do is just get small, shrink their body.
Like,
she's doing that, but like creeping upward.
Like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now she's doing the stairs downward, in case you're on podcast only.
Don't worry, I'm here. Okay.
And she's back. She's sitting at her desk again. Oh, she almost fell over. Almost fell off of her chair.
I'm like a Pee Wee Herman, so I'm gonna take his place.
Hello, Cherry. I have a feeling we should probably get down to business after that bizarre introduction. Hopefully somebody followed that.
The absurdest PR
yeah, that was the weirdest intro we've ever done. Oh, Veronica's gonna add, our show producer's gonna add a poll about this to see who followed along. Okay, so with that, our guest is here, Laura. Should I let her in?
Yes.
So our guest today is Rhiannon Ruff. She is the co-founder of a digital agency, Lumino, and the author of the new book, Wikipedia and Crisis Communications. For the past decade plus, Rhi has helped large organizations and Fortune 100 companies navigate the online encyclopedia, and she regularly speaks on the topic in agency seminars, podcasts, and other media appearances. Today, she is here to talk about how marketing teams and PR pros can integrate the Wiki encyclopedia into their comms playbooks, of which I think is very interesting because we get asked that a lot. How to seek updates to existing articles or effectively create new ones, and how Wikipedia plays into brand reputation and crisis, such as, for example, where the OceanGate submersible page on Wiki exploded in popularity during the crisis. So welcome, Rhiannon. Awesome. Well, I understand from Veronica that some of the things we're talking about today are sort of the integration of Wikipedia and PR, and I'm very excited to hear from you. I know we've had some clients who have said, I need to get on Wikipedia, and it's not so simple. It usually requires some level of expertise to do that. So I'm curious if we can just jump in where I'm sure a lot of PR pros have gotten stuck. Like what happens when your client said, get me a Wikipedia page or fix my Wikipedia page?
That's a really, really great way of framing it, because a lot of times that is where folks are starting out. If you've never kind of dealt with Wikipedia before, maybe, you know someone at like a previous firm that you've worked at who's perhaps had an idea about it. And then your client one day says, I want a Wikipedia page. And for a lot of people, it is that moment of like, where do I begin? And they do some research online. They don't have quite an idea. Maybe they have heard my least favorite thing ever, which is, oh, you can't do that yourself. You have to hire a third party to go and do that for you. But actually, the most important thing to note is, what stage is the client at? Are they ready for Wikipedia? That's the biggest question to ask first, is why do they want a Wikipedia page? Is it for a specific reason that isn't being accomplished by everything else that you're doing together? Are there other digital areas that they could be looking at instead? And if not, if there's some specific reason why it has to be Wikipedia, the next thing is, okay, can they have a Wikipedia page? Because there's actually a really high bar for what types of topics qualify for their own Wikipedia page. And it all comes down to what type of media coverage or other types of secondary coverage do they have. So recently, in the last few years, editors have gotten a lot more strict about allowing companies, brands, business people to have a Wikipedia page. What they want to know is this just going to be another profile that could just be, a listing on a site somewhere? Or is this telling us something really meaningful and encyclopedic? And the way that they have to differentiate between those two is, what have other sources said about this topic? So they're looking for what they call substantial coverage, which basically means there has to be really in-depth coverage about the organization or the brand or the person. So it can't just be, oh, they've been mentioned in a ton of places, or we've got loads of press releases out, or, oh, all our fundraising rounds have received some press. It has to be that super, really rich, deep type of coverage.
You can't buy your way into it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so tough to hear. That's really tough for a lot of clients. It's not like, oh, there's going to be a 3-month plan and we're getting Wikipedia. This is a really tough thing to do, and deliberately so. That's the point. Wikipedia editors don't want you to have a Wikipedia page. That's not their goal. They want to only give pages to people who've done something that's remarkable, noteworthy, really specific.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if your client has that, then what? What do you do?
First of all, that's magical and amazing, because at this point, it's very rare that occurs. And then the next step is, look at that coverage. What does that coverage say? Because here's the next hurdle, is that a lot of times folks have this thing where it's like, okay, well, we've looked at all of the media coverage, all of the types of coverage that we have, and actually what it says does not relate to the current brand. Because for Wikipedia, it's not like our other types of coverage out there that, any communicators, PR people, it's a very different approach, because you're not sitting down and coming up with the narrative with the client and then taking that forward and finding your sources to back it up. You have to write from the sources. You can only put onto Wikipedia what's already out there in those sources. So we have to say, well, what do those say? Is this what you want to be on Wikipedia? So that might be something where you're saying, okay, well, let's hold up. We got to get some media coverage out here first that says the right thing. On the other hand, if everything looks good, then the next step is putting together a really solid draft. So you have to take your sources, write things up very factually, very neutrally, based on those sources, look at other Wikipedia pages to get a sense of the tone. And then this is crucial. You cannot just go and create that page. You can't just take your draft and go and like copy paste it and follow the little process, the little wizard there to create this new page, because you and your client, you have a conflict of interest, and anyone else that you hire to do this has a conflict of interest too, which is why you can't just go out, hire a third party to go do this. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is have either someone from your team or from the client's team set up a Wikipedia user account and say, hi, I'm here from this brand. You've got to disclose. You've got to be fully transparent. It's part of Wikipedia's terms of use. It says that you must be transparent if you're going to be there and you have a conflict of interest. And then the next step is you have to have editors review your draft. So you're not just going to go create it. You have to go through a process called articles for creation. You got to submit your draft for review by Wikipedia's community of editors. And you have to be prepared that they're going to give harsh feedback, because Wikipedia is like this community of volunteer editors, and their goal is to have a really great encyclopedia. they don't care about your brand. They don't care
Yeah.
about your executive or whoever it is that you want to have a Wikipedia page for. And the thing that's really important to realize and for the client to understand is that there's nothing that you can do to persuade these editors other than to do a good job. Because Wikipedia editors, they do not have to help. They're volunteers. There's nothing that says that they have to review this draft, that they have to take it live. So you've got to make sure that you're thinking about things from a Wikipedia perspective. Is this a
Yeah.
really nice non-promotional draft that clearly explains what this topic is, includes any controversy that's received major coverage, and does it clearly show why this topic qualifies? Like, what's unusual, significant, different about this brand or this person that means they should have a Wikipedia page?
Very interesting. And then, so what happens if your client doesn't yet have enough coverage? Do you say, that's why you hired us? We're going to get you
Yeah.
more coverage.
Yeah, basically, I mean, I'm not a PR person. So I was really bad when people are like, well, what's some good tips to get the type of coverage that we need? Like, I really do not know.
Hire a PR firm, yeah.
That is not my wheelhouse. You go and you talk to some really smart PR people because they're going to know how to do that best. But yeah,
Right.
I think that's the thing is it's finding that line between, okay, well, this is going to take a while because getting that kind of coverage is really tough. For Wikipedia, you can't have press releases, you can't have any contributor pieces, op-eds, sponsored content. It's got to be organic media
I was just
coverage.
gonna say organic
And not thought leadership material. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
organic
exactly.
meat.
Yeah.
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 Because the next question clients are going to ask, okay, how many stories have to be written about me before we can try again for Wikipedia?
Yeah. So partly it comes down to the quality. So if you have, 10 short pieces, that might not do it. But if you have, 4 or 5 pieces that are about them and 2 or 3 are in really good outlets and they're really in depth, they go into a lot of detail about background, about the organization, about what's going on there, that could qualify them.
Okay, so next question. I'm sorry, full of questions. Laura, do you have a
No,
question?
go ahead.
I'm just
I
like
do have questions, but maybe your question is the same. So go on.
Okay, I'll ask one more and then I'll stop and let you ask questions. What happens if your client has a Wikipedia page that has information about them that they don't want?
Oh boy.
That was my question.
How do you get rid of information on Wikipedia that your client doesn't want out there?
Sometimes it's easy because sometimes it's information that shouldn't be there. Maybe it was like really poorly sourced. It's from like a tabloid and it's just, it shouldn't be included in Wikipedia in the first place. So sometimes it's an easy one. And sometimes it's more difficult. Sometimes it's like, well, I just don't like that there's this controversy in there. Yes, we had this lawsuit. Yes, that's how it played out. But why does
I
it
don't
have
want
to
it
be
there.
there? I don't want it there. And the answer to that is there's not really anything we can do about that. It's out there. It got a lot of coverage. The way that it's dealt with in the page seems reasonable. There's nothing inaccurate about it being there.
Right.
You just have to
And
deal with
pushing
it.
the coverage down through SEO doesn't affect it, does it?
No. Crisis used to be like, let it pass, right? We don't respond to that. We don't put out things when these types of things have been resolved. But now you have stuff like Wikipedia where it's this long-term record. So you can have things like, oh, there was this giant lawsuit, but then you don't have anything that says how that was resolved because the company never came out with a statement to say like, as of today, this is all resolved. We paid a settlement. Everyone's fine. But that's the sort of thing that now is really important for sites like Wikipedia.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Like you said, there might be coverage from like tabloids
Yeah.
or something that was reported that turned out not to really be the case, a year
Yeah.
or two later, and it's still there. So if you're like the page, if that's your company or you're, a celebrity and it's your, personal life, etc., how do you get that removed or fixed or changed or whatever?
Always transparency is really key. So, making sure that they have a disclosed Wikipedia account. And then on Wikipedia, there's all of these discussion pages, talk pages that are like a discussion forum that lives behind every single Wikipedia page. And that's where you go, basically, if there's something you want to fix on a particular page. And you go there and you offer up sources and explanations, and it all has to be kind of from a Wikipedia perspective. Again, you can't just be like, I don't like this. But if it's something like, oh, I noticed that there's an update from 2019 and then one from this year, but in between we had a major pivot at our organization. Here's 3 sources about it. Here's some suggested text that I think editors could potentially add to the page. Can someone review this? And then one of these volunteer editors will come on by, review, and potentially make that addition. They might have questions, they might rewrite it a little bit, but that's basically how it works.
Are they ever willing to just flat out delete things?
Only if it's inaccurate and it's been clearly shown to you. So I think you mentioned before that, what if something is later refuted and the sourcing for that? That's a situation where something might get removed because, there was an allegation and then I get later found out that that wasn't true. So that's something where editors might remove. Or if it's something that's been added, and it's actually like a really minor thing, like it was an acquisition, but they're a giant organization, and this particular acquisition was like a really minor one, and it doesn't really seem like there's any reason to include it.
It makes me think, did you guys hear about the Russell Brand story that just came out the last day or so? So right now, his name is Mud. He's vehemently denying it. So Wikipedia might update that he's a rapist, and then it might come out somehow that he's not, but that might not come out, proved in the courts or whatever for 2 years, especially with, male celebrities. It's such a precarious landmine, I feel like, to even have the page. Can you say to Wikipedia, as Russell Brand, for example, just take my Wikipedia page off? I don't even want it.
No, that is not possible. So you can't just get rid of your Wikipedia page, which is another kind of point. What if your client comes to you and they want a Wikipedia page? One of the questions I always ask individuals
is,
do you really? Because if there's anything out there that's critical about you or that might come out in future, it can potentially get added to the page. Now, for individuals, there are some really specific rules on Wikipedia for, it's called Biographies of Living Persons is the set of guidelines. And it's basically an attempt to make sure that there isn't damage that's caused by Wikipedia to that person's reputation. So if there's certain things that are allegations, they have to be treated as allegations. So no one can write at the top of Russell Brand's page that he's a rapist, right? They can add a section into the page that says, allegations in 2023 and can detail, in September 2023, 4 women came forward and made allegations against Brand and kind of limited state what those allegations were. So that's the type of information that can be added, as long as that is sourced in really high quality sources too.
Well,
so if only the Sun had reported on this or the Mirror, then that would not go in. But if it's from really good sources, and it'd be like, according
and then of
to
course
the
April
Guardian.
will say, what are really good sources?
Yeah.
We have this discussion about what news is actually news anymore, right?
Yeah.
CNN reported it, I'm sure. Some people don't think that's legitimate news.
Yeah. That becomes tricky.
And I know you're not a PR expert, so that's not for you to have to answer, but I'm just saying.
No, that's a great question.
It's just a web of nightmares, especially for individuals.
But I have a related question, though. What is the role with Wikipedia in brand crisis and reputation related incidents? So, for example, the OceanGate submersible page on Wikipedia exploded in popularity during the crisis. Can you speak to that? What did that look like? How did that happen? And then, obviously, again, knowing you're not a PR person per se, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Wikipedia is really misunderstood and underused in terms of crisis and how crisis comes and PR professionals look at things, because again, like I mentioned earlier, like Wikipedia becomes the long-term record about things, but it's also in the short term, it's going to be like a real anchor for people who are interested in the topic. But it's interesting, it's not every topic. It's not every crisis where people will be like zooming to Wikipedia for things, but a lot of the times they will. So, something like OceanGate, immediately people are like, they haven't heard of this company before, number one. So they're going to want to go and try and find out as much about it as they can. And the first place that they're going to look is a site that they perceive to be independent. So Wikipedia is that. So if you're crisis planning,
Yeah.
think about Wikipedia first. So already
Interesting.
have it in your plans, already be keeping an eye on it, because it's the first place people are going to look if you have a crisis. So does it already have accurate information about you?
Right.
Does it
Mm,
already reflect the right types of details about your organization? Or is it 10 years out of date? Maybe has the wrong CEO. Maybe it mentions like, a controversy that got resolved, but the resolution isn't in there. And then secondly, like everyone, Wikipedia editors are following along when there's any kind of crisis that comes out. Big ones, they are going to go to the page. What can they get out of the news and update this page? They're aware of what the page traffic looks like too. It's public. You can go and click on the little tool that shows you how many people are viewing the page. So Wikipedia editors will be like, oh shoot, we should go and maybe gussy this up a little bit, add some details to it. I've been reading about this too. I'll add stuff in. And then you have your drive-by editors. So folks who are not maybe regular Wikipedia editors, but know how to do the basics, and they will just kind of read something, stop by and add something to it. So there can be really fast growth on a page for an organization or an individual that's going through a crisis. There can be a lot of material added in a short period of time. So that's the second part of it is, if you're aware that your brand is going through a crisis, you want to keep an eye on how that's evolving so that you can see, well, is there something that's being missed here?
Right.
Was there, a response to this or a resolution or a next step that happened that didn't get reflected here, but is out there in the media coverage? And make sure that you're taking steps to go and update that if you can.
I know we kept you way over time. Are there any questions that we didn't ask you that we should have?
Oh my goodness. I think maybe just being aware of the rules for Wikipedia. A lot of folks are just not aware that the site has specific rules for anyone who is trying to edit on behalf of a person or a company. So it's super important to know that you can't just jump in there if you have any type of connection, whether you're working on behalf as a PR agency, you're working on behalf of a client or the client themselves going in, you can get involved, but you have to follow the site's rules. So you can't just edit the page directly. You need to use that discussion page and make requests. And you have to be transparent. Wikipedia editors don't want you to pretend to be someone else or avoid the question altogether, but they do want you to be transparent about who you are so they can see whether there's any bias involved.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Rhiannon Ruff. Also have a website for my company, Lumino Digital, luminodigital.com. And we also have a newsletter, which I will send you ladies the link to. Love for folks to sign up. And then you can read all kind of fun news about Wikipedia that we throw in there every week.
I love it.
That's great.
And anything you want to plug on your way out the door?
I would also love to plug my book, which is about Wikipedia for crisis communications and gives you a lot of good info on all the nitty gritty on what to do if you are going through a crisis and you think that it might impact Wikipedia.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. And we look forward to having you back at some future time to talk about some Wikipedia crisis that arises.
Oh, absolutely. Would love to come on. Next crisis, I'm here.
Okay. I love it. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for your time. It was such a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you both so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks. So, Laura, the news of the day, which we're jumping into now, is something that you were excited to talk about. Do you want to tee up for the audience the corruption trial that revealed a Me Too ethics entanglement for a top Biden advisor?
Yeah. So Anita Dunn, who is the co-founder of a communications firm called SKDK and is considered a member of the president's inner circle, provided crisis communications to Michael Madigan, the then Speaker of the Illinois House of Representatives from 2018 to 2019. And that work netted Dunn and her firm more than $200,000, according to campaign finance disclosures. So while she was advising Madigan, Hampton received support in her case from Dunn's firm, which partnered with the anti-harassment charity Time's Up Legal Defense Fund. And Hampton was the party who was accusing Madigan, right? So Dunn's work for Madigan was specifically focused on responding to the allegations stemming from Hampton's lawsuit. So as a result, the SKDK, the D stands for Dunn,
Yeah.
was on the one hand supporting Hampton in her harassment and retaliation case through its partnership with the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund. And on the other hand, SKDK was getting paid by a defendant in the same lawsuit. So the question is, can you represent both sides of a case or an issue? Did Anita Dunn violate conflict of interest ethics? And, can we analyze the clunky public response to the situation? So I know this woman's name. I worked for the United States Senate in I'll just give a decade, the 90s, and she was a big deal back then. She's been around forever. So I suspect she's been doing this kind of stuff on all sides for a long time. The thing that popped up in my head is what I've run into with big PR firms. They can't have Coke and Pepsi as a client, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes these big PR firms will establish a different company, a shoot off.
I worked for one.
Right. And so this is why I wanted to ask you about it. It's not exactly the same, but it's still the conflict of interest story. So that's as much as I've heard of it. This to me, there's two things. It either sounds crazy, oh my God, how can you do that? Or it's possible that, I don't know how big the company is. It's possible that SKDK is so big that the person doing the one side never really crosses paths with the person who does the other side. I don't know.
You can't possibly do that. So Hampton said Dunn and SKDK's representation of Madigan was not disclosed to her at the time.
Oh, so the client didn't know.
She said they never told me that they were also working for Michael Madigan. And had they disclosed that with me, I would have never applied for legal funding or PR support with them, Hampton told NPR in an interview.
That's the bottom line, I think, right there.
Yeah. An SKDK spokesperson, Michael Cezanne, initially offered a defense of the firm's work for Madigan, saying that we, quote, have a stringent internal conflict process. The work for the former speaker cleared that conflict process and was designed to help him fix his workplace rather than paper over his very real problems. The following day, however, SKDK revised its statement saying, in retrospect, we realized that the decision to work with the then Speaker Madigan's campaign on these matters was an error in light of the support Ms. Hampton was receiving from another firm through a separate initiative we were proud to support.
Oh, God, that's just, I don't even know what the hell they're talking about now. It's so clunky.
They're doing their best to cover their tracks, and it didn't really work.
It's this side of my mouth and this side of my mouth, blah, 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 and then trying to bring it together and just it being like word vomit that makes no sense.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
And who's coming out with these statements? Basically a PR firm. I love PR firms can't communicate for themselves. Anyway, go on.
I mean, okay, in the legal world, there's no universe in which you could do that. You can't even, if you're a divorce attorney and you consulted with the woman in the marriage, but she didn't hire you, you cannot then represent the husband in the same divorce case. There are very strict rules in place in the legal world that are not in place, obviously, in the PR world. Which, again, is, I think, part of what happens, when people end up not having a regulated industry like PR. And then the reputation suffers as a result, right? So it's a bit unfortunate. But I think it shows that it would be good if there were more regulations on PR. But I think people have been talking about that for ages, and that is not how it's ever gone. So I don't know that's realistic.
And she
that will happen.
The big name in DC for this stuff, so everybody goes to her, right? Like you're saying in the divorce situation, who gets the best lawyer? Maybe the husband and wife both want the best lawyer in their town.
And people use all those rules if they know them to do things. I had a friend whose now ex-wife went to every single lawyer in the state.
Oh, so he couldn't go to any of them?
Yes. And did a consultation with all of them, which is partly why I know that weird rule, because I knew that happened to him. So at any rate, if they were in place in the PR world, it would probably be even messier than a vindictive wife who decides to like go to
Right.
every lawyer in the state. But
I think at the bottom of it all, like I agree with all of it. The fact that they didn't tell her that they were representing the guy she was suing or whatever. That's the biggest issue.
Yes,
actually.
agreed.
If they had told her and she said, "I'm doing it anyway," it would still be weird, but that's the reason why we're here now, right?
Yes, agreed. Okay. I feel like I can't stomach more of a conversation on this. So I think we can call it a wrap.
Okay.
But interesting discussion for sure. Okay, Laura, are you ready to wrap it up?
I'll take it.
I'll take it. Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in for the PR Wind Down podcast.
And thank you to Rhiannon/Ree for joining us for an interesting interview.
Remember to submit your own agency stories and questions and to share our show with your friends and colleagues. If you subscribe and leave us a rating, it will help us reach new listeners like you.
Can't wait to
wind down with you again next time. I don't understand how you can't just say it when I say it with you.
I was saying it first and you weren't saying it.
Okay, try again. Ready?
1, 2, 3.
Can't wait to wind down with you again next time. What is this? Okay, one more time. Third time's the charm.
Okay, we going on 3 or are we going on the 4?
We're going the beat after 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Can't wait to wind down with you again next time.
That was amazing. Not really.